All right, hello everybody, and we are live. Sorry, it took a little while to get on. Wanted to make sure everybody was sounding good. It's awesome to have these guys with me tonight, talking about the Yuba County Five case, because this is the Yuba County Five dream team right here. All the best. We have, of course, Tony Doug Wright, who's got a book coming out soon, and I know like the longer it takes Tony to write that book, the better it's going to be, because he's just learning more and more and more theories. But it's
Yes.
going to be called "Things Aren't Right" by Tony Doug Wright. I love plays on words. Everybody knows. And we have, of course, Anthony Dunn. He's Tony because we have two Tonys, so we'll be calling him Anthony. So I might screw up a couple times, but he's in the UK. And Anthony reached out to me a long time ago about this case when I first covered it before I wrote a book about it. I think I did a video or something, and you emailed me like 2 or 3 years ago. It's been a while.
Oh
Because
yeah.
you've been on this case a long time as well. And then the latest addition to the team is Eduardo, and it's a Colella, right? Am I saying that right, Eduardo?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and I had a phone call with Eduardo, and I was just stunned by how much he knew about the case. I obviously knew that Tony did and Anthony did, but then Eduardo joined our team and just has a lot of deep case knowledge on the Yuba County Five. But the reason we're doing this tonight, and I'm so happy all you guys made it. I mean, it just means everything. But today is the 45th anniversary of when the Yuba County Five went missing back in 1978 out of Yuba City. And I know most people here already know the story because we're going to get deep into it. And if you don't already know the story, you'll probably have to go watch another video and get caught up to speed, because this is about 5 men that went missing on February 24th, of course, 1978. They went to go see a basketball game in Chico, California, and they never made it back home. And there started one of the biggest, probably the biggest disappearance case in American history, if you ask me, because there's so many bizarre things attached to it. And of course, 4 of the guys were recovered. We call them the boys. And I know everybody knows where that name comes from, but one of them was never found, Gary Mathias. His remains were never found, so he's still unaccounted for till this day. So how's everybody doing tonight? And I'll start with Anthony. And what does it mean to you to be here? We have 2 of the families here represented. We have George Madruga, of course, Claudia and Tom Huett. Tom is, of course, Jackie Hewitt's brother. So it's so awesome when family members can make it on. Tammy is on. Oh my God, we have 3 of the families represented. Tammy is here. 3 of the families are represented here tonight, and that means a lot. That means a lot to all 4 of us. So thank you to Claudia, Tom, Tammy, and George for being here. I mean, I'm getting choked up, so I'm going to let Anthony take it away.
Hello everyone. I'm Anthony from the UK, like Drew stated. I got into this case, I think, same as you, Tony, right? As after I watched the YouTube channel Bedtime Stories, they did a really good YouTube video discussing this case, and I remember after watching it, it was really impactful because I have similar friends and cousins who are very much like the men. They are been diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So it was just really, I felt more connected to this case than any other missing persons case that I've done research for. And it was just a really bizarre mystery that the more you looked into it, the more questions you had. And even now, like 3 years since I first started researching it, there's still a lot of questions that I have. Even after reading Drew's book, listening to the Mopac audio, I've spoken with you, Eduardo, and Tony. Try to do as much research as I can, but I'm hoping that we can discuss some theories tonight. Potentially get some new information out there as well. And hopefully see what the families think of this as well.
That's great. What about you, Eduardo? What brought you into it? I know we talked a while. We talked, I think, over an hour one day because the other guys couldn't make it, so it was just you and I going through theories and everything.
More like
but
2 hours. I remember.
Yeah, I think it probably was, and I was
Yeah.
blown away by how your case knowledge and how much you knew it. I mean, it was impressive. So I could see why Anthony and Tony were equally impressed. Like, yeah, well, you got to talk to Eduardo. He really knows this stuff.
This case is so unique. I believe we all went through the same road here. I also knew about the case in Bedtime Stories, a great video. I from From then I started watching everything that I get my hands on, reading everything. But honestly, it wasn't until I read your book, Drew, Out of Bounds, that I didn't, to that point, I didn't get really the case. I thought it was, yeah, but, reading your book, I realized that it has so many twists and turns, and it's a unbelievable set of circumstances you cannot find in any other case, and it's an unbelievable story. It's an unbelievably sad story for the families, for the boys, and I got attached to the case because unfortunately the missing disappeared persons is not a strange subject to me, unfortunately. So I kind of understand what the families go through in these cases. I remember telling you guys for Tony's book that when you put a family through this is the worst torture you can put a family through. Not knowing that what happened to a loved one, it's very, very hard. And it takes years to heal if you are able to heal. I have known several kinds of persons that they never get past through these things, and it's just a horrible thing. So it's kind of personal to me now, and I joined this fine community to see where I
it
can
is a
what I
community.
can add.
It's like a family, with the family members of these guys who trust us with their stories. And there's there's nothing bigger than that, when the families trust you to tell the story.
That's the most important thing. I feel honored to be here on your channel. I feel honored to be heard by the families, who have never met me. And, the families doesn't know me, but I think at this point that I know them because I have read so much. I have read your book. I'm eager to read Tony's new upcoming book. I have listened, like, I don't know, honestly, 15 times the Mopac audio by Shannon McGarvey and her crew.
Oh yeah.
And,
Everybody should definitely check
it's
out
like
the
you
Yuba
you
podcast.
you have a link with the families already.
Yeah, and I want this to be the channel of record for this case, and for a lot of good reasons. So Tony Doug Wright is like, he's still the ringleader of knowing the most about this case. I mean, with this awesome set of guys, like I know Anthony and now with Eduardo is out there, and Anthony's like, he's gonna know anything on the internet and the chat rooms, Reddit, he's on top of, and then Eduardo rounds it out. But Tony Doug Wright is a guy that knows everything, that he's like the go-to for so many things in this case. So Tony, I know you got into it through a podcast.
Yeah, it's the way it happened, just like Anthony Dunn and so many other people. It was 2018 when the case was really taking off on social media through podcasts, articles, and original content on YouTube. I was watching the 100th episode of Criminally Listed, and not long after that, I watched the animated one, which Anthony talked about, The Boys from Yuba City, which is on bedtime stories. And then from there, everyone else was talking about it. I think it was called the Stuff You Should Know podcast. And then there was like articles on mental floss. And I think the San Francisco Examiner did an online article. And within a year of all this taking off, we have Benji Eggel's article in the Sacramento Bee. It was a 2-day run called Out in the Cold, involved in interview direct with Jack Beecham. And it's the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first article to use the actual case files. So Benji had access to the case files. He had his Sacramento Bee article. And then not long after that, we had Mopac audio and your book coming out, Drew, Out of Bounds, when they were released. I think your book came out 2020, 2021.
Yeah. It was 21.
Then,
yeah. And I didn't have any access to the case files. I just had old newspapers articles. So I was trying to, I don't know, I didn't know that Benji had them, but I knew that obviously Shannon and Mopac had them. And then, that was a whole new world.
Yeah, it was. And having a chance to go out and research the files in person, it was more than I expected. I didn't expect so many files. And I work in records management and archives. So I was, I was a little bit surprised how big the case was. It had been digitized at the time, easy to navigate, and it was pretty cool. And what's the good news is that the Yuba County Sheriff's Department is very willing to work with people. They want the information out there. It's one of those situations where they appreciate any help, and that is greatly appreciated probably from the families as well, for people to take this seriously and to do the work.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm glad for you guys, because we're always trying to come up with new stuff. And since this is the anniversary and we're not going to do a whole lot of background, I just want to, everybody's name again, that, the boys are Jackie Huett, who was 24 when we went missing, Gary Mathias, he was 25 years old. Ted Weiher was 32. He was the oldest of the five. Jack Madruga, he went by the nickname Doc because he liked Bugs Bunny, What's Up, Doc, and he liked cartoons. That's where this nickname came from. I know most people know that, but he was 30. And then Bill Sterling was 29 at the time he went missing. And of course, the remains of four of the boys were found. And of course, Gary's unfortunately were not. We still don't know, if Gary ever made it out. But, I think the assumption with Gary is he probably just got a little further out in the woods and succumbed to hypothermia or something like that. But, so this is just a solemn occasion because we're just still looking for answers. And, I know, we get into theories a lot, and there's always somebody asked earlier in the chat, what's a new theory? So like, there's always a new theory. Like I had never heard of the coach theory, and I didn't know that the coach didn't show up for the Special Olympics game that following Saturday. So, that's not one of my favorite ones, but it's still one that needs to be investigated. So that's why the more people to this, the better that we can jump on these leads like that.
I'd be very sorry to interrupt you, Drew.
No, go ahead.
I'd be really interested as well to know a bit more about this coach, because we know his name and we know that he's still alive. He lives in Florida. He does have a criminal charge, but I think it's assault or a minor assault. But at the time, I think I was speaking to you, this about you, Tony and Eduardo, that in the case reports, the original files, Lance Ayres interviewed him. I believe he went to Gateway Projects and he interviewed this coach, and he interviewed, I believe, like a receptionist or a worker there. It was a female worker. And this coach not only didn't want to tell Lance where he was on the night of 24th and early morning hours of the 25th of February, but he was kind of a bit of a jerk to him. I think, like you were saying, Tony, he was just not helpful at all, a bit blunt and rude. And it's also weird that he not only wouldn't tell police where he was, but he was late to the Special Olympics game where the Gateway Projects team, they were meant to meet at Sacramento, to get a coach to go to the game, and he was late for it. And he's the Gateway Gators basketball coach.
And he was the head coach, correct? Well, he was the head coach.
Yes.
He wasn't like an assistant, but there was more than one team though for Gateway, right? Whether it was like two or three. I know there was more than one.
I've never really found that information out. I know that the five would practice together, and what's key to the case is the day before, Ted Weiher, Jack Madruga, Jackie Huett, and Bill Sterling drove the county area to Sacramento for a last-minute basketball practice. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not certain they knew they had been to the school before. The school they practiced at in Yuba City was closed for an event. And they told him, hey, you can schedule somewhere else. And Bill Sterling looked around. He called and called and called places. Finally found the school somewhere in Sacramento. They made it back. So it seems like it's a school they probably never visited before. And someone who worked at the school actually said, we saw these guys at the school on the 23rd for basketball practice. I think the reason that Gary Mathias didn't go was a Thursday night, and usually basketball practice was on a Wednesday night. So that was probably the change there. And getting back to what Anthony said, the coach didn't show up the day of the game. The team did go, and
so the coach never made it at all. He wasn't late. He didn't make it at all.
He didn't make it to the meeting point, which was Montgomery Ward Department Store, downtown Marysville, California. And
Right. And then they
Ted
were all
Weir's
going to go to
sister-in-law-
Sacramento.
Right. They were all going to go on a bus together. And by the time Ted Weir's sister-in-law arrived at Montgomery Ward Department Store, everyone had left. So they had all traveled to the game, and we don't really know anything about the coach until he's interviewed by Lance Ayres. Which
So that was out of
probably been
character for
early.
the coach. That was out of character as far as they knew, for him to, you know, just totally
think
blow
so.
it off meeting.
There was something else that was interesting. We were just talking about it before with this coach, and that there's a YouTube video done by a YouTuber named The Missing Enigma, and he also looks into missing persons cases, the 411 cases, if you would, and he also got access to the original police files. And there's a screenshot he has in the video where this coach is describing the men, his view of the men. And I also found this a little odd, that he calls Bill Sterling lazy, even though, according to Jack Madruga's mother, him and Bill used to walk a lot, like long distances, a lot. And Bill was very active in his community. Like he used to attend church with his family. He used to go to Napa Valley Hospital to read Bible passages as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very active person. So that was a bit like odd remarks from the coach. He also described Ted, if I'm not mistaken, as a bit confrontational, which is kind of against what his family said.
Never heard that.
Weird. But the biggest one to me was, I know Benji Endel really focused on Gary Mathias in his 2019 article, and he used a quote from the coach saying that that he thought that Gary could flip out at any time, but he also said that he didn't know Gary that well, which I was just saying to you, Drew, is a bit odd, because like they originally brought on Gary to help out with teaching some of the guys at Gateway Projects basketball.
Right.
So you would have thought that if this coach, was not only helping the boys but having Gary work with him a little bit, that you would have known
he enlisted Gary to help out, because he knew Gary was an athlete back in high school, and Gary played football at Marysville.
Yeah, I believe
so that is odd.
Yeah, he also said that he had to. I don't think when he talked about Jack Madruga, I'll have to find the quote, but I think he said that not confrontational, but like he had to deal with some issues with him, which again is odd, because Doc was described as like very polite but quiet. So I that it just seems very odd.
It is strange, yeah. Quotes. And I know you're talking about the channel Missing Enigma, who had a part 1. I haven't seen part 2. I know it just came out, so maybe he wanted to put it out on the anniversary. Yeah, I don't know him. That's Nick Kyle.
He's new to me
is
as
the
well.
name of the guy that runs that,
Okay.
and that was he did a really good job with the first part. I haven't seen the second yet. That's my favorite channel, actually. That's my favorite YouTube channel, but I don't know him. I actually just friended him on Facebook, so he does great work. So I recommend that video on Missing Enigma, Yuba County 5, part 1 and 2, with the theories. And then I wanted to ask all you guys a little bit more about what he presented in part 1, which some think because he has access somehow to the police files as well now. That's why he made some stuff on his video that people hadn't heard before. And I was going to ask any one of you guys that would come in on it, was he talked about the distance that the boys had to walk from Rogers Cow Camp to Daniels Inc. And he actually knew the name, because I know that you guys know it now. It was called what was it called, the Fire Camp or whatever, and that was like a mile from Daniels Inc. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's in the vicinity.
Where the trailers were.
They're very close to each other. So
you still just call it Daniels Inc. though?
I mean, I would say it's the Daniels Inc. vicinity. I'm trying to remember back to Cynthia Gorney's article, and I think she may have said something about a fire camp. And then Tammy Phillips, that we have talked about that, and she has told me that the coach was not fond of Gary.
Oh, wow.
And then getting back to Anthony Dunn's comments, the coach did say that Ted Weir did have a short fuse, but when people talked, or when people were interviewed at Gateway, they said that Ted would only fight if people were picking on him or provoked. So that is Ted Weir's personality. He is a nice guy, pretty laid back, kind of Ted being Ted, just a fun guy. But I mean, people have told me, if you got on his nerves and you really, 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 really tested his limits, I mean, he could wallop you.
Yeah. All the boys were athletic. That's why I kind of go back to both of this, and it's not the coach theory now. That because I never heard until I think Anthony maybe saw that online. But I know the one thing in the Missing Enigma, he was talking about how maybe they started from Rogers Cow Camp and basically walked the 19.7 miles or whatever the newspapers used to say. Which brings me to another thing. I mean, I don't know how he would know that from the police files, though. And I know, how would they do that? I mean, well, where was the snowcat line? Did the line that made the snowcat, did it basically follow the road that goes up and around towards Bucks Lake, or did it kind of go south a little bit and then back up like a snake?
I know there was a map that Mopac Audio had on the website that showed the route that the snowpack trailer took. Sorry, not the trailer, the snowpack took. I think what he was trying to convey was a lot of the original not police reports. The newspapers at the time were stating that the overall distance from Jack's car to the trailer was roughly about 19 miles. But we know as the crow flies, it was only about 5.5 miles. And if you were to follow the snowcat, the route left by the snowcat, according to the map that Mopac Audio put up, it would have been roughly about 10 to 11 miles. But I think what Nick was saying in the video was that if the men followed the road, you originally started following the road and then it kind of differs out to the right a bit and then comes back up to the trailers. Yes. He was suggesting that if the men walked this entire route, it would come up to about 18 to 19 miles.
Yeah, so the initial thing would have been correct.
Yeah, but I agree with you guys when we've talked. I remember talking about it with you, Eduardo. Was that some of the guys were a bit closer than others. Obviously, we know that Bill Sterling and Doc, Jack Madruga, were quite close friends, and obviously Ted and Jackie were very close as well. I know in the case reports it says that Gary was also like a big brother and was quite protective of Jackie and Ted as well. So it kind of makes sense to me if maybe they reached a point in the road where, if they reach that bit before it goes out to the right or you carry on, maybe Gary, Jackie and Ted carried on the road, whereas Bill and Doc went right. But that's just another theory as well about where they could have ended up. I personally do think that it would make more sense if they did follow the trail left by the snowpack.
All the way?
Potentially all the way. Because I know it follows the road for about 9 or 10 miles, and then it cuts through the woods to get to the trailers. And I think it cuts through about a mile, and it leaves a little track off the road. It would make sense if we followed that, but also, like he pointed out in his video, for Doc and Bill Sterling to end up where they did, they either would have had to have gone off the trail, like we've discussed, and then somehow got back onto a side road, or potentially they all made it to the trailer and Bill and Doc were coming down that side road to get back to the car as Jack had his keys. I know Jack Beecham and a lot of deputies believe that Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga passed away on the way up. But we don't know 100% for sure. We do know that Jack had his car keys on him. And something else that I brought up to you guys was the fact that Doc had his watch in his hand. And to me, that was a bit strange. I remember reading it for the first time as well.
Yeah, his car keys were on him, and he was grasping his watch in his left hand.
Which is weird because it's, why if you're one of the theories that we'll talk about is that the men might have been running from somebody or a group of people that were after them.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there for sure.
Which to me is strange if that's the case. Why would you be looking at your watch? But we had a theory going as the autopsy results for Jack Madruga had, from what Shannon said in the Mopac Audio, was an internal lateral break-in, which is sort of when 2 or more of your ribs have had some sort of damage to them. and she spoke with some doctors, autopsy results, who one of them said it was post-mortem, but the other one suggested it might have happened before he passed away. And we were discussing the idea of, well, maybe the boys were following the path left by the snowpack, and maybe the route, wherever they wanted to go, the route was taking too long on foot, so they decided to go off the route, through the snow. I've seen some videos online of people on dirt bikes, going off route. So I could see that maybe being a potential. Maybe they saw a little dent in the snow that was like, oh, this could be a little path where we could go to get over the hill. Maybe Doc takes a fall. He hurts his ribs, and Bill Sterling helps him, which is why him and Bill sort of lag behind as Gary, Jackie, and Ted push onto the trailer. But we were suggesting, I remember saying to you, Eduardo, that what if, as a result of Jack's injury, if he got it before he passed away, obviously if you were injured in your rib, you'd struggle to pull your arm up. So if you were trying to look at your watch, it would make more sense to take your watch off your wrist and bring it to your other hand. So you wouldn't have to lift your arm up. You could just sit back and look at your watch, which to me could make sense if they were both on the side of the road and they were both waiting for the other guys to come back from wherever they were going.
Yeah. What do you think, Eduardo? You think that's a good theory about the watch?
It makes a lot of sense. I never thought about it. But then again, what doesn't make any sense is what the hell are the boys doing up there in the first place? That's there we go, back again to square one, like everything with this case. No, I think the Anthony theory make a lot of sense. I tend to agree to law enforcement, which they say the Doc and Bill Sterling never made it to the trailer. Even searching the trailer, there was no trace of them, and that makes sense, But why will the boys be there in the first place?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. But
excellent question.
Yeah, and we're still trying to figure out who actually made it to the trailer. I think back to missing Enigma on the first part. I don't know, Anthony, or I know you saw it too, but was he saying that he didn't think that Jackie ever made it, or was it Jackie was one of them? I think
Jackie didn't make it.
Never made it.
I don't believe it.
I don't either. I think Jackie absolutely made it.
Jackie was on the trailer. I believe that. Yeah.
I think I agree with you. I think Jackie was there. We know that Jack Huett Sr. stated that he saw his son's initials on a chalkboard.
Yeah.
Which he recognized as his son's initials, and he told one of the deputies there, and they shrugged him off and said, "No, it's not." I get what the missing Enigma is trying to say. If the boys followed the entire road, like the 19 miles, it would make sense if Jackie unfortunately dropped out before, because it would make sense. But I agree with you. Not only did Jack Huett Sr. see his son's signature, but he also reported that he saw 11 toes, like toes that were frostbitten on the floor, which, according to the autopsy results, Ted had only lost 5. So it would make more sense if somebody else was in the trailer, like Jackie or possibly Gary maybe as well, who was there and unfortunately suffering some similar side effects. I personally think that Jackie did make it to the trailer.
I do too.
I think that it's possible that Gary, Ted, and Jackie all made it, and Gary left very early on. Maybe he was only there for a day or two, and that it was Jackie looking after Ted because they were so close, and maybe it got to the point where I think I was saying this to you, Eduardo, that there's a possibility that when the search and rescue was trying to look for the men, I believe in mid-March, they were sending helicopters up to Bucks Lake around that area. And I believe that where the Daniels Inn campground was, it was only about a mile and a half south from that area, from Bucks Lake. So there's a possibility that maybe Jackie Huett heard the sound of the helicopter and maybe left the trailer to go get help to try and signal it. But, unfortunately succumbed to the elements. But that's, again, like Eduardo was saying, we don't really know. It's a possibility, but considering how long Ted lived in the trailer for, it would make more sense if Jackie was with him for the most of the duration of when Ted was alive in the trailer.
Yeah, well, we know that Ted wasn't alone on the trailer. We know that for sure, for
Yeah.
several reasons. Now, another
Yeah.
question is figuring out who of the rest of the boys were with him. I tend to believe that it was Jackie. They were best friends forever, inseparable. They will never be left alone by the other.
Yeah,
And
such a great part of the story. How
yeah,
those guys would never abandon the other.
then
You know,
again,
that just tells you so much about them.
one of the main voices of this story is Jack Huett Sr. This is a desperate man looking for his son, looking for all the boys. He left his job, he left everything and he knew the territory.
Yeah,
This
I
is
got a picture
one
of Jack
key
Sr.
thing.
up here on the top right. That's Jack
Yeah.
Sr. With Tom and Claudia, of course, and there's some pictures of Jackie.
Rest in peace.
And so that's the Jack Sr. He did such. I mean, oh my gosh, you guys know what he did. It's just what dedication, and it's hard to talk about.
Yeah,
This
and then
man
you see
did
Sarah
so
Hewitt
much for the
down below.
search.
Yeah.
Huh, Tony?
Oh, Sarah Hewitt's down below in the picture with Tom.
Yeah, I saw Sarah. I said hello. Yeah, Sarah's in the chat as well.
No, she's in the picture.
Well.
No, she's in the picture with that.
So that's Sarah, their mom. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's Tom in the front of the motorcycle. So those are the motorcycles they were riding around on. But with what Anthony and Juan were saying, I agree with them. And what's also impossible, in my opinion, how they walked. I think they walked along the roads because the Forest Service did say we used a snowcat and we went from point A to point B to that trailer to get the snow off of it because we had to clean the snow off the roof. And that's the last time the Forest Service was there. And the Forest Service would say in the press, we sent someone to tell either Butte County, which I believe it was Butte County, that those trailers are there and they wouldn't check them or didn't check them. So I've heard a lot of stories about that. But another thing I think is pretty fascinating about the whole case is how they navigated the Plumas National Forest in the middle of the night. Now, I know that there was snow on the ground. There was probably, I forget what kind of moon was out, but even with moonlight, even with snow kind of reflecting that, you're not going to be able to see everything. And it's probably, I don't know how illuminated the ground would be, but I can tell you the Plumas at night is pitch dark. And if you take one wrong step off the road, there's some parts of the terrain where it just drops, not just 10 feet, 20 feet, it could be 100 feet. And there's some very dangerous drops, which could be incredibly bad. And that's something I've thought about with Jack Madruga. Maybe these guys started navigating their way along the roads and someone took a really bad spill. Is that possible? I mean, sure. But that place is dark at night and the roads are like winding. And if you're driving there and you can kind of see that the roads that go from Marysville to Chico, just a straight shot, just an old fashioned highway or state highway, you know, there's groves along, houses along the, but once you start going through Oroville and you start going up into the mountains, you're winding around and you're in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. And it's a change
you're climbing an elevation pretty rapidly.
In the middle of the winter?
Yeah.
I mean,
and it just doesn't.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense that they would just keep climbing an elevation.
It doesn't make any sense that Jack Madruga would go up there because we know. I believe you wrote in your book, Drew. I think it was either Kathy or George who told you the story of when Doc went to drop off Jackie Huett at his farm, and he refused to drop him off all the way because the
wouldn't damage the car.
Was too, and you've got to think because a lot of people try to put forward the theory that maybe the men got lost due to a result of poor weather conditions and the cognitive disabilities. I know a lot of people online really force the idea of the men's intellectual disabilities being more severe than they actually were.
That's true. That got blown out of proportion.
That example, Jack Madruga, even on ideal sunny conditions, I think it either took place in summer or autumn when he attempted to drop Jackie Huett off. Like that was in the day in good flat conditions. There's no way he'd go up that mountain like in those conditions and keep driving.
No way. Yes, that's so true. And George
road's not
will
even
say,
paved.
who's in the chat, George Madruga will tell you, who's one of the few people he would ever let drive that car. George has driven that car. I'm showing a picture of it right now where they found it, you know, in the snow that night. And I think it was the Monday night where they found
Tuesday.
the car. Oh, Tuesday. Okay. They spotted
Yeah.
it early though. They spotted it.
Yes.
And then they came back, and then that's when this photo, I guess, was taken that night. But as George said, his uncle absolutely knew when he was lost and to turn that car around. And there was room on that road to turn around if he just got lost. So something compelled him up that mountain.
And that's a long drive from Oroville to that point at Rogers Cow Camp. It's a long, winding, meticulous drive, 25 miles an hour. Probably at night, absolutely. And you know, you're going to see deer on the road, probably. You know, as far as wildlife, I don't know about any other animals that would be out, but I mean, their homes, their houses along the Oroville Quincy Highway that they drove. So if you're lost, you stop and you ask directions. And they could have stopped at Mountain House. Mountain House is on the way. And there are all these little off spots in the Plumas National Forest where you just pull your car over, do a U-E, get back on the road, go the other way.
Yeah, that's why I hate those theories that they couldn't turn around or they just got lost and they couldn't turn around. That drives me crazy.
Well, yeah, it's not like that scene in Austin Powers.
I agree on that. Lost, they got lost is out of the table. I mean, come on. The sad thing is that the police believe that. This is the sad thing. They believe, at least for a while, they believe, oh, they got lost. I mean, we don't know what happened. In my mind, this is a crime. I have no doubts about it, but I also don't have any evidence. This is a crime. But let's assume the doubt. Maybe the boys went willingly to that point, but
they were tricked or something.
They didn't get lost. I mean, it's like Tony said. You have a multiplicity of places to know that you are going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, you're climbing an elevation.
Yeah,
you know the weather's bad. None of these guys like that kind of weather, or you know, and there's no way. There's no way.
The first time I went up that way, my ears were popping a little bit, just because we were going up. So, you know, I think Rogers Cow Camp, we had it at 4,000 feet.
Yeah, I think it's like 4,000 or 4,500, somewhere in that.
So once you get to Bucks Lake area, Granite Base, then you should be at 5,200. So if you're making that, you know, drive up winding road, and you're going to notice it. And someone I talked to who was familiar with the Plumas National Forest said that some of the roads could have been chained off, saying, you know what, no through traffic, because they were kind of doing that when I was up there the first time, 2021, because of the wildfires. They were doing a lot of work. They had to close some of the roads because a lot of trees had fallen down because of the fires. And so the damage was just too dangerous for people to drive down. And the snow being one of the worst seasons they had between 77 and 78. So that's why they had to chain off part of the road. And that's why the snowcat had to go up there, because they were having record snow. And
wow. So that's interesting.
Like all we're saying. Yeah, it's not getting lost. I'm sorry. How do you get lost?
Nobody agrees with that. Yeah, George just says no way they're lost. Here's a guy whose uncle was driving the car, and he's driven his uncle's car, and he says no way.
Jack up to this day believes this. This is hard.
There was one thing that I recently noted when I was having a conversation with one of my cousins who is on the autism spectrum, and I was telling her about this case, because he is quite similar to Bill Sterling in the sense of that he's very analytical and he likes to collect a lot of maps. And I remember chatting to him about this case, and the one thing that stood out to him when I told him about this, because I was like, look, this was in the 1970s, there's no phones. And I put forward the idea of, okay, let's imagine that you're lost and you're with your friends. What would you do? And I told him about that there was a map out in the car, just the one map, and he immediately pointed that out. My cousin, he was like, "Well, that's odd, and in itself." And I was like, "Oh, why is that?" And he said, "Well, if that was me, and I think Bill had brought 3 or 4 maps with them." He says it's very strange that he'd only be looking at one map, and it was a general map of California, I believe.
Yes.
He immediately said, "That's strange. I'd be looking at every single map, trying to determine where I was, going through it, every single bit, telling the driver, look, try this, go around here.
Good
Maybe
point.
we're here." So the thing that he pointed out was, well, what if it wasn't Bill that was directing them? What if it was someone else that had the general map? This brings me on to one of the theories about potentially a third party being involved.
Yes.
So there's a popular theory in this case that regards somebody called the town bully. And we've discussed this. We know this person's name.
Yeah, we know who this person is. Yeah, by the way, this person's still living, so you're not. I mean, it's not too hard to go find that name, but you're not going to hear it here because this person's still alive. But I'll tell you, as soon as that person we're talking about passes away, and I know that, this will be the first channel to come on and talk about them.
Oh yeah, the story that is discussed not only in your book, Drew, but in the Mopac audio. We've discussed it, Tony and Eduardo, and it's a theory that has been discussed a lot by the families and by the locals in the area. Even a week after they disappeared, was that on the way home from the game after Bears Market, town bully and some of his crew stopped the boys either at the Oroville Dam or at the Mid-Barwell Bridge. The town bully got the boys out, started beating up Jackie Huett, and Gary got very angry and hit the town bully. This caused the town bully and his crew to beat up Gary, and potentially in a fit of rage, this town bully threw Gary over the bridge, which killed him. Or he killed him and then disposed his body over the bridge. It's then reported by potentially somebody called Red, who came around to the Mathias family and who told this story to Gary Mathias' mother.
Yeah, that Tammy will attest to that. Tammy's the first one that told me that they came and told her mother this story, and other families know it too, but from different sources. And this story's never changed really, hardly at all that I've ever seen. I've never really seen, much change in that story from different places.
Well, we've been talking about this as well. One theory I mentioned to you, Eduardo and Tony, was that from everything we found out about this town bully, he's an enforcer, he's sadistic, he has a connection to the Mathias family. He did a lot of horrible things, not only to the Mathias family, but to a lot of people around the town. There was a story that Tom Huett and Claudia Huett told you, Drew, when you interviewed him, that there was a teenager who had just got a new Land Rover, a Jeep, in the area.
Oh,
the town bully found him and went, "I'm taking your car, and if you try to go against me, I'm going to really mess you up." So the kid this guy's driving his car.
He's a bad guy. He's done a lot of bad stuff. We know that for a fact. Whether or not he threw Gary Mathias over the dam, we don't know, but we know he's a bad guy that certainly was capable of it.
Well, this is the theory we've been discussing. We know this guy's an enforcer. He's sadistic. He likes to torment people, but he's not a criminal mastermind.
No,
he might have experience being in and out of jail, and people were scared of him, but he's not he's not like a serial killer. He doesn't, he's not someone that plans out stuff. One theory we've been discussing, and this goes back to my original point about the map and somebody else using it, was what if the scenario's the same? They stop the boys at the Mid-Barwell Bridge or the dam. They're slapping Jackie Huett around. Gary gets angry and hits the town bully. The crew jump on him, and in a fit of rage, the town bully kills Gary, which not only shocks the 4 men, but also some of the town bully's crew into going, "Whoa, I thought we were just going to rough up Gary. Like, you've killed him. What the hell? Like, we've got to get rid of these guys." So what if the town bully went, "Right, I know the police investigation comes, they're going to come looking for me, so I need to get an alibi. I need to leave the area and go somewhere else. I need to get, an alibi from someone. You need to get rid of these guys. And if you don't get rid of them, I'll get rid of you. Like, I'll shut you off the bridge as well or something."
Oh, yeah. Oh, everybody was scared to death of this guy. That's fact. So there's no doubt that everyone feared this person.
So what if somebody in the crew, maybe like Red, who told Gary Mathias' mother that he had, he was not only scared of the town bully, but he was frightened about what happened. He kept saying that he kept turning his back. His story was that he kept turning away. He didn't want to look at what was happening. Well, what if the town bully turns to him and another member of the crew and goes, right, get rid of them or I'm getting rid of you? Red, he's scared.
And then he drives Doc's car up to the Rogers cow camp, because that's where it's kind of hard, because as they said when they got the car back, that the underbody was that blew him away how clean it was, because we know that's how he would drive his car. So I always fully believe that Doc drove his own car up there, either followed or not, or maybe someone else was in the car with him with a gun or who knows what, but that Doc was driving his own car because he did it so carefully.
What if it was Red who was given the instructions to Doc Madruga? What if Bill, Jackie, and Ted were in the back, and Red's the one in the passenger seat looking at the map, because it's a general map?
I'm open to that.
And that's why he's pointing the gun at, or he has a weapon at Jack Madruga, and there's either another car in front of him or potentially a car behind him, making sure that Jack Madruga doesn't turn around and says, right, go this way. Or, and like I said, Red might have apprehensions. He's not like the town bully. He's not he's not a psychopath by the sounds of it. He's somebody that has troubles with drugs, and obviously he's committed crimes, but he doesn't really sound as sadistic. So maybe, like we said, maybe he has apprehensions. Maybe he's thinking, okay, where can we go to get rid of these guys? Can we go here? No, that's too close to, there's houses here. Oh, what about here? Oh, there's Mountain House Lodge. We need to go further up. So they get to Rogers Cow Camp. Maybe, unfortunately, the other four men are pleading with them not to do it. And maybe, Red goes, I'm sorry, but you've got to go. Bang. Fires a gun in the air.
Yeah, because Red doesn't have the stomach or whatever, let's call it that, to do away with the other guys.
Yeah. And
then you open up this whole nother, can, literally. I mean, no pun intended, talking about the sea rations, but you open up another can. That means that it had to have been Jackie Huett taking care of Ted all for at least 8 weeks.
I mean, there's even problems.
A good point.
There's even problems with the, if somebody else is in Jack's car, and, especially if it's the town bully as well, there's no way they let Jack drive so slowly up that mountain. They'd be ramming his car. They might, if there's someone else in the vehicle with him, they'd be like, look, go faster, and it doesn't make sense because Jack's car was found, almost pristine, which would indicate he was driving very cautiously up the road. And if you've got someone behind you, there's no way that they'd let him drive that slowly. So again, that's like Eduardo was saying, that's another roadblock in that theory of, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, that's why I asked twice, both Drew and Tony Wright, what about the fingerprint report on the Montego? Because there is no way you can hijack a car and not leaving a fingerprint, a mark of any kind. Right. You don't get in a car just like this and say, hey, drive to, no.
Yeah, you're going to touch the dashboard. You're going to touch something, right? So, Tony, what is the deal with the fingerprints in the car? There was just nothing?
They would have Madruga's prints and they would have Gary's prints, because Gary with his record, but they didn't really find any other prints. I mean, they found, like, at first what they thought was blood, but the print, whatever test strip they used was a false positive, and they think someone may have had something on their hands like ketchup or some kind of sauce, and Doc really liked Taco Bell, and they think maybe he had something on his hands and he put it on his visor. It wasn't blood, but they believe they had on file Jack Madruga's prints and Gary Mathias's prints, which were on the car. But from my understanding, Ted, Jackie, and Bill did not have prints on file. It wasn't common for people to have prints on file. I remember as a kid, probably around 79, 80, I got fingerprinted because they did something at a mall for like missing kids stuff. But that car was not watched for 4 days, because if you really look at it, Thursday or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and it wasn't until 7:30 p.m. Tuesday where authorities are alerted and they're coming up to the Plumas. So someone could have wiped down the car. Someone, I mean, if they really wanted to,
that's a great
their
point.
tracks.
Someone who went twice, and we all know who we're talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of ifs here in this case. Like if Jack was driving the car, which I think he was driving the car, because as we keep saying, who else would drive a car up there? And there's a lot of good points about if you're mad at someone, you need to get that car up there at a certain point. You're not letting them go. Because if they were going to turn around, all they have to do is just pull in to the road, pull back out. And that road was like an old stagecoach road or something like that, or a logging road. Nobody needs that road, and it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't link to a highway. It doesn't link to another road. I mean, it's a road to nowhere. And they go towards the snow line. Doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense. Yeah. So if Doc's driving his own car, and we can all agree there had to have been under a ruse, and maybe they didn't spring it on him until the car stops at Rogers Cow Camp. And then we get to the point again. And I know somebody asked about this earlier, and we're looking at a picture of the car right now when it was found. What's the source of that claimed that the window was rolled down? Because in this photo, you can't really tell. It looks like the window's down on the driver's side, on Doc's side, which makes you think that somebody stopped with him and he rolled the window down. Because another thing that we know about, and George will attest to this, is that there's no way that Doc will leave his car with a window down. That's not happening. That would never happen. And so is this just from Schoen's testimony when he walked by the car that the window was down, or do we even know for sure? Or do we just have this photo?
It's in Cynthia Gorney's article, and it might be in another article as well. And I want to double check the police report about the window being down, because it was definitely down, mentioned in Gorney's article, and I got to double check the police report. But they took the car apart. I mean, they basically took the car apart in Oroville. They took it to a body shop, and they did a major, like a real thorough check of the car. And I think like I said, the only prints they found were probably Madruga's and Mathias's. And I don't even think they were successful getting prints out of the trailer after they found Ted. There were prints, but they couldn't match them up to anyone, and they really couldn't find any latent prints there, which is incredibly frustrating. And just one thing for me here, unfortunately, I got to get going, but it was great talking with Juan, Anthony, and Drew, and also I know who's all out there from the family and supporters, and appreciate it being here tonight. But you guys, I know you're going to carry on and continue discussing this case, but for right now, I'm going to have to exit stage left and call it a night. But guys, thank you so much. It's an important night.
Can I ask something before?
Appreciate making it, Tony. Sure. I know it wasn't easy because you got all the the snowstorms and everything. So thanks for coming on, man. I mean, it means a lot, and I know it means a lot to the families and the work that you continue to do on this case. I mean, I'm overdoing other, I'm like in DB Cooper land, I come back around, but I know I got you three guys that I can always come to and say, hey, what's going on here? I mean, and then you're going to eat, and we have an email chain. So that's so great.
And then Juan, did you say you have a question?
I want to ask you if we have a release date.
Not yet. I mean, it's done and it's going to the final edit, but we got to get someone to get it printed, and then we will go and get it published. So hopefully by the end of this year, early next year, it seems realistic depending on the pace of publishers, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll keep you all posted. Don't worry. I won't keep you in the dark.
Coming on. That's the important thing.
Yes, but thank you all
and he'll
so
be coming
much
back on here when it is out, and he'll be on again before then. Thanks,
all right,
Tony.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good evening. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tony. Yeah, Tony's done such great work on everything. It's
eager to read his
so
book,
great
man.
that he's the point
this
guy.
weight is killing me.
Huh? Oh yeah,
I want to read Tony's book
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it because Tony is so methodical that it's going to have all this new stuff, and it's good that it's taking a little longer in a lot of ways because now he's able to absorb more of the coach stuff and the files more and things come up, which is great. But staying on the theories. And I kind of know where Tony comes from, and things change a lot. But I know somebody asked earlier, and we're always going to have to cover this point: is Joe Schoen's okay? I've always, I've never come down on any single theory, but
This is the man.
I always come back to Joe Shones. I do, I'm starting to think now, and I love the town bully theory. I know it well. You guys know I do, but I'm not throwing out the fact that this could have been a botched kidnapping. I'm thinking that today. I'm thinking this could have been a botched kidnapping with Shown somehow involved. I mean, on a lower level, but knowledge of it.
Sense. Yeah.
A botched kidnapping, because it explains a lot. It really does. Like
Oh.
maybe they didn't want him to play in the game the next day over a bet or something like that. And I'm just thinking something gets bought. But like we were talking about, I think Doc drives his own car up to Rogers Cow Camp, and then the window gets rolled down, and hey, you're coming with us. Something like that, I'm thinking about this one more and more. Not throwing out any of the others, because that's all still in play, especially after hearing Anthony tonight talking about the watch and the town bully, because I know that's a big theory, and I know Jack Sr. was a real big believer in that theory, because he was there on the ground, he was there searching, and he was talking to people every day, and people at his work said, hey, we heard this, and he's there, so obviously he's got the benefit of being there and talking to all these people. He did such great work, trying to find out what happened to his son. But I don't want to throw out the fact that it could have been a botched kidnapping, because it's just something went wrong. They just wanted to either hold the boys for a while, either for a ransom, or they just didn't want them to play in the game the next day. It's just something I'm thinking about.
Well, we do know, and Drew, you've mentioned this as well, I believe, on a previous show, that we do know somebody who knew Joe Shones pretty well, let's just say that, who 2 weeks after the 5 men vanished, this person was charged with attempted kidnapping and attempted to kidnap adults.
Yes, somebody that knew him. We won't say who. I got a picture. It shows up now. It is from the police files. I know some Missing Enigma showed a younger picture of Joe Shones. This is what Joe Shones looked like. This is from his driver's license. I put the little watermark on there, so if anybody wants to screenshot that on the internet, you'll know it came from this show. But and my friend touched this photo up. Ryan Burns, who's great at this stuff. Everybody knows Ryan. Did a great job of touching up this driver's license photo of Joe Shones. So that's how the guy looked at the time. You could tell.
This is 78.
He looks kind of drunk there. I mean, he was a town drunk. He was just in the younger picture of him. It was a mugshot. He definitely looks intoxicated.
And the liar.
But yeah, he told a lot of tall tales. I mean, he did. So,
a
botched kidnapping makes a lot of sense, because there's no reason that Joe Shones goes back, leaves it. We know now, because of the files, Joe Shones, his VW was there. It wasn't him just saying that. It was there that night that the boys went missing. His VW was up at Rogers Cow Camp. That is a fact that I didn't even know in the time. I mean, the files bore that out. There was witnesses at Mountain House that saw Joe Shones come in there. They saw him leave. One of the witnesses saw him leave, and they wondered to themselves, why is he going that way? Because he's going uphill in the snow towards Rogers Cow Camp. And, of course, his story was that, the original story was he was going up to a cabin he owned in advance of a ski weekend with his wife and daughter. That's nonsense. Everybody knows that now. That's a joke. And then I know when you listen to Enigma or read the files, he said he was going up there to check the snow line because they were going to play in the snow with his wife and daughter. That's comical. No one believes that. It's complete bunk. But his car was there. His VW was up near Rogers Cow Camp on February 24th of 1978. Why? Why was he even up there?
That's an amazing question. He was there. His car was there. He lied. I believe, if I recall this correctly, between the statements Shones gave to the media and the statements Shones gave to the police, you have like 6 different versions, if I correct.
Oh yeah, it changed. Yeah, probably 6 is a good
6 versions.
Good
I mean, come on, man, keep the story straight, right? But then again, if we think this with some logic, if Joseph Shones will have anything to do with this, he will have to plan this out before. So this means he will have to know about the game. He will have to know about the boys going to the game. And this is the part where this theory goes flawed for me. But I mean, maybe it's a combination of two. Maybe the boys went willingly for any strange and bizarre reason up there, and they met this guy who's such a character, such a liar. I mean,
Oh
and I
yeah.
can say this because he lied. Joseph
He's a liar.
Stone
Yeah, he's a
lied
known
about
known
this.
liar,
This is
and he doubled down on
this is
those
a fact.
lies. You call him out on it, and he'd just keep going. He'd be like, even if you showed him proof, he'd keep going.
One
But
interesting
he
question
was
for
up
me is
there.
why
He
the
was up
police
there.
didn't went harder on this guy.
A
Do you
lot
know
of
why?
them, were. I'd say half were very suspect of him. They did
Yeah.
they did do a lot of digging. When you read all the police files, which I'm still getting caught up on because I got so busy when somebody gave me access to them, and it was long after the book. And I would say that a lot of them through different jurisdictions were extremely suspicious of him.
But did they press him?
I don't know. I don't know how hard they did. I mean, they definitely looked into him deeply. I mean, they knew his other arrests for DWI. Like Anthony said, somebody very close to him, we won't say who, has a charge of kidnapping of adults, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yes.
that gets my attention. And it wasn't too long after the boys went missing that this happened. That's why I'm thinking
10
of a
days.
botched kidnapping now.
Well, we know
Another funny coincidence, yeah.
We know, like I said, a lot of the general videos you'll see on YouTube will obviously discuss his initial claims about what happened that night. He gives different versions, like you were saying, Drew. Some versions he said he went up there to check the snow line because he wanted to bring his family on a ski weekend. There was one interesting thing he said to police, he said to an eyewitness when they were being driven back. They asked him why he was there, and he just said, "Oh, I was there to kill time." And this was before he was interviewed by police. Another interesting thing is we have two eyewitnesses who, after February 25th, I believe, they saw the car, Joe Shum's car, and Jack Madruga's car, and they reported seeing human vomit and like somebody had defecated near the car, which apparently are side effects of somebody who is experiencing a heart attack or somebody who is experiencing heart issues or medical issues.
That is consistent, yeah.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing as well, which I didn't know about this at the time, I was just talking to you guys before we started this, is that something that just is, again, another suspicious thing about this guy. So we all know the story that he allegedly gets up there, suffers a heart attack, stays there for hours, and then walks back, I believe, 6 to 7 miles to Mountain House.
Right.
Lodge.
I'm going to put, that's a good walk for somebody that's had it's a mild heart attack, but that is a good, the star here on the bottom is where Rogers Cow Camp was. And then you're going, and there's Mountain House all the way down here.
Well, when he gets back to Mountain House Lodge, the
what a
first thing
hiker,
he does is he walks in.
That's a good hike.
He walks in to Mountain House Lodge and grabs a drink. And then there was two eyewitnesses there. There was the bartender and I think somebody who.
I'm glad you're bringing that up.
I was chilling there, and he comes in. He appeared obviously out of breath, but he didn't really appear to be too much like he was having too much issues, like medically. And very strangely, as he's having this drink, and the bartender overhears this, and this other person that's
was it water, or was it or was it alcohol? Do you know?
I think it might have been alcohol. I can't remember.
After all that, he's going to drink again.
But something that was interesting was this bartender and someone else overhears him very clearly say, "I should have done this 2 years ago."
What do you guys
very odd.
You credit that statement?
What do you think? What do you guys think that meant? I should have done. He said, "I should have done this 2 years ago."
I don't know what to make of that.
I have two theories in my head. It's either one, I don't know. This is given a lot of leeway. Maybe he was thinking out loud because maybe he's just had heart issues, and then maybe he was thinking, "Oh God, I should have got this checked out 2 years ago."
That's a good point. That's a good point.
But also the other one is, he's come in, and he's not initially told people he's had a heart attack. He's just come in, appeared very weathered, and he's just out of the blue said, "Oh, I should have done this 2 years ago." Something else that he interestingly says is he gets a couple to drive him back from Mountain House Lodge to his house in Berry Creek. On the drive there, this couple overhears him, not in pain that somebody would obviously be from suffering a heart attack. He's moaning, he's complaining about the husband's driving, and is saying, pointing out how he could be doing a better job. But he also casually says, when the husband asked him, why did your car get stuck? Joe Shones casually says, oh, it was because another car was following me so closely. It caused my car to bottom out. He never said this to police in any of the interviews or any of the interviews he does for the newspapers and media at the time. He never says this. And another interesting thing is when his wife and his daughter, who had a disability as well, came to the hospital to check on him. Apparently, I don't know if it was a nurse or somebody else in the ward, noted that Joe Shones was crying. Like he just started crying when his wife came in. I don't know if he said anything to her, but that was another odd thing that he never brought up as well to the police. It's like, well,
that is weird, but he felt the need to come forward and say he was there. And then he says things like, well, I might have imagined that because I was having this mild heart attack. I might have hallucinated this. None of the story you buy, because let's say that he's telling the truth for the most part, that he wakes up around midnight, the car runs out of gas. He's up near Rogers Cow Camp and he's stuck in his VW for the heat. Remember, that car's got to be running to produce heat unless you have an aftermarket deal. But okay, so he sees this headlights come up behind him the first time. It happens twice, remember? And he says he has the heart attack and he's calling for help. He gets out of his car, help me, I've had a heart attack. If he's actually seeing people that were responsible, let's say that they're the ones responsible for the boys going missing, are they going to leave a witness up there like that? This old guy they could easily dispatch of, they're going to leave him there? Come on.
And you've got to think of Joe Shones. Okay, let's hypothetically believe he's gone up there for whatever reason. He's having severe medical issues. He's there for hours in a freezing car, and he sees possibly one or two cars either come up behind him or further down the road. Why, even if the people didn't hear you, why wouldn't you immediately carry on down the road? This is the first sign of anyone you've seen in 6 hours. You're having a heart attack. I'd be doing everything in my power just to walk
grab
down
the guys, you help me or you don't go anywhere. I mean, you're dying, man.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the key point. Exactly. With
it's so bizarre that it almost goes against like logic and reason. Why is it that allegedly, if you see someone come up the road, the only sign of life you've seen in hours, could be your only chance if your car is running out of gas, which he did say it did do eventually around midnight. Why didn't he keep pressing and going to the cars? Why didn't he keep shouting for help? It's strange that he goes back to his own car, tries to get back to sleep, and then a second time when some people
around 3 a.m. in the morning, roughly 3 hours,
flashlights. Why does he again attempt to not get help
or walk towards him, like you're saying? When he obviously felt good enough just hours later to walk all the way to Mountain House from Rogers Cow Camp. And 6 miles.
Yeah. And some
it's downhill, but still you wouldn't walk over a few car lengths or whatever it was to go say, hey, I'm right in your face, I'm having a heart attack. I mean, it's nonsense.
And like Eduardo was saying before about about the car. About the car and possibly somebody coming back to the car to move it. Well, we do have a claim from Cindy Shones, which is Joe Shones' wife, that after Joe Shones went to the hospital, I believe it was on either February 25th or February 26th, Cindy Shones and Joe's daughter go to Mountain House. They ask the manager if they can have assistance moving Joe's car. They claim that they go up, they see the Montego and Joe's car in front of Jack's car, and they dig some of the snow out with a shovel, and they try to move Joe's car. Unfortunately, they claim they only move it a little bit, but they somehow move it closer to Jack Madruga's car.
Good point.
Which I kind of find is a little weird. Why don't you try and move it around it? So that's another thing. But they say they have to leave it, and then they come back another time, which is a bit odd.
The whole thing is strange.
And we also know as well, according to Tom McGeary, which was Joe Shones' neighbor for a while, a lot of people online say, Joe Shones, he sounds harmless. He doesn't really sound like he could do anything to the boys. Well, we've heard from Joe McGeary that there's an incident where I called him Joe McGeary, that Tom McGeary had a falling out with Joe Shones over something. They got into just an argument. Tom ended up punching Joe. Tom left Joe's property, went back into his own property that he was living with his cousin and his wife at the time.
And his cousin's family, couple young kids.
And then literally 5 minutes later, they hear gunshots ringing out, and they go outside to have a look, and it's Joseph Jones firing out because he had a younger rifle.
Randomly firing a rifle. I think it was a rifle or something. Yeah.
Firing it carelessly outside, maybe not directly at Tom or his cousin, but he was firing. Joe Jones was firing it carelessly while Tom's cousins, like sons and daughters, were playing outside.
Yeah, it was hit one. I mean, not far away. Like it was so careless.
Yeah,
and they called the police. Yeah,
we know that Joe Jones and his wife Cindy were raided by, I believe it was Plumas or Butte County for growing marijuana on the land. They were raided by one of the districts. They weren't arrested or charged with anything, I think, which is a little weird as well. And again, there's so many stories of Joe getting drunk, going to Mountain House Lodge, going to the other bars near Berry Creek, telling tall tales, pissing the wrong people off, getting thrown out, and then getting his car stuck and relying on other people to get his car unstuck. And this was something that he was known for. Apparently, it got to the point where Tom described a time where he drove past Joe's car that had been stuck, and it had just been graffitied and vandalized by someone that had just come to,
Yeah, if anybody, he deserves it. Claudia brings up a good point. I forgotten about. Like she said that Sean stopped talking after the third change in his story. Started the questions. He said stop asking him questions because they could bring on another heart attack. Like when somebody asked like why didn't they press Jones more? But somebody I think maybe someone in the chat asked that earlier. The reason why they didn't press Jones more is because every time you did, he was like, oh, he's like Fred Sanford and Sanford's son. You're like, oh, the big one's coming, the big one's coming. That's what he would do.
But
so I'm glad you brought that up. That's exactly what he would do.
When the police is stopped by caring about a suspect heart condition. I mean, come on, because the Sean story doesn't make sense in any sort of way.
None. But he was there. His car was there. By right. What are the odds that his car? I know it's not supposed to say that, but it was.
Yeah.
Why was his car there? Why would he's drunk? Let's just assume he was drunk. He's going to go uphill. And I found out he never owned a property that far. He never owned any properties. Nothing near Rogers Car Camp, and definitely not up towards Bucks Lake or anymore north of Rogers Cow Camp. Nothing. He had no reason to be up there, even drunk. I mean, yeah, he was known to get his car stuck, and people would help him. They'd pull him out, and he would notoriously never even say thank you. People would stop, help him out, and be all polite, and the dude would just take off. He's a real piece of work.
Oh yeah. But something else.
Again, how meeting the guys? This is the part that doesn't make sense to me. He planned. Let's assume he had something to do. I'm not saying he was, but just if he planned all this, how did he plan all this? How did he know that the boys were going to the game?
Yeah, exactly.
This is the only weak link for the Sean.
Maybe he knew somebody that did. I'm just throwing that out there because it's strange that he is up there the night that it happens. Of all people, it's got to be Joe Jones is the prime witness. He's the only witness, really. The lady in Brownsville was that's phony. She was probably after their reward money, and I don't know if Joe Jones ever inquired about the money for the reward that the family put up.
Speaking about money, you brought up possibility of Joe and somebody very close to Joe, maybe a theory of money laundering. Well, there could be maybe not a full-on reason behind it, but we do know that Joe Jones wasn't, the most what's the right word of saying it? He wasn't the most wealthy of people. Let's say that. So
no,
could it be he organized this attempted kidnapping and? He wanted to hold, like you said, he wanted to hold the boys for ransom. Maybe he figured,
or just for them not to be able to play in the game the next day. Because I know Tom said that people would gamble on those Special Olympics games. So that's just another theory. They happen to go missing the night before the biggest game that they're going to play, and not only the year, but for years.
Well, one more theory to put on top of the theory pile is, I know we've not just discussed this one a lot. There's not as much evidence behind it, and I know Tony's still looking into it. But I remember talking about this to you, Eduardo, and we talked about it, Drew, as well.
Yeah.
That as ridiculous as Joe's story sounds, there was somebody at the time, and Tony Wright was researching this. We talked about this as well. There was somebody at the time who not only owned a red pickup truck, they had a tow trucking business just north of Forstown. Not only did they own, have a business, have this business and that was basically revolved around picking people up that were stuck. This person also had a wife and also a 2-month-old child. And if we go back to Joseph Shone's alleged claim, one of his claims was he saw
a woman holding a baby.
Exactly, which is very strange. This person, they are deceased, but I don't think we can say the name. I think Tony's still doing research, like we're still doing research. Again, he might not be connected at all, might be completely random, but this person did have a criminal past. I believe they were on bail or parole at the time. And again, they did have a wife, and that wife did have a 2-month-old child. And like Drew said, Joe Shones allegedly claimed he saw a woman holding a baby. In the lights of these two cars, one of them possibly in a pickup truck. So that again, it hasn't got as much weight behind it. I know Tony, knows more details about it. But again, I was saying this to you, Eduardo. It's just another potential thing in these many theories.
Yeah. I don't know what to do with that, but it's just another thing. Because if you think about it, the first thing that Beecham said to the search and rescue teams was to kick every single door in the area, because if someone has anything to do, you have to look in close to the car, And
that's a good point.
From that point of view, what Anthony says could make a lot of sense, because
because so many strange things would happen up there. You had all these weird people, marijuana growers, people that were living off the grid. That if you just, there's so many stories about that entire area.
Anti-federal government
outside
militias.
Of this story.
Come on,
people would go camping, and a guy would come out of the woods with a gun, or like they were going to try to attack a couple that was just camping up in that area. And I remember all these stories,
I recall the Madrugas say that they found booby traps and trick wires and all kind of Vietnam traps up there. Come on, what kind of people live there?
Yeah, there's a lot of bad things could happen if they did happen to get up there by just some form of accident, which I don't believe. Something had to have compelled them to go up there, and something definitely compelled them to leave that car in freezing weather in street clothes through 3 to 6 foot snow drifts, no matter what path they took to Daniel Zink or the fire base camp, whatever we're calling it now. That's a long walk, even if you went through the path of the snowcat. It's just they're not going to do that, and so something scared them.
If you guys have to pick one theory that you guys think what happened that night, what will it be?
Sure.
Go ahead, Anthony. I'll let you go.
For me personally, again, I know we don't have full evidence for it, but for me personally, Shones, it has to do with Shones. Everything just from we were talking about this as well. From all the evidence that was found at the scene, we have Jack Madruga's car being relatively undamaged, which indicates he was driving cautiously and carefully. We have the lack of foul play just in terms of on the men's bodies, like there's no gunshots and knife wounds that they could find. The fact that the tracks leaving Jack's car initially were walking, they weren't running, they were walking up the hill. Sorry, on the road. They were walking up the road, not running.
Or walking trucks,
Jack Madruga holding his watch in his hand. The fact that Gary and possibly, Jackie Huett, it appeared that they were looking after Ted, that they were eating the sea rations, that there were other tracks leaving the trailer going up towards Soapstone Hill. To me personally, this just, from everything that we've seen, I don't really see this as 5 men running for their lives. I see this as potentially 5 guys getting caught up in something or be manipulated to go up there by somebody else.
Yeah.
They go to Rogers Cow Camp. This person, potentially Shones, either has a heart attack, fakes a heart attack, or persuades them to go up this hill with the intention of getting help for him or getting something for him. And the boys are, they might be scared, or they might be in a good mood from just watching the game. They want to help out somebody, they've got the game the next day. And maybe Joseph Shones or whoever it is convinces them, look, if you go up this hill, if you follow this path, there's help there. Just please get me help. I'm having a heart attack. He convinces the boys to go up there. I think the boys, after looking at the map, maybe Bill Sterling looks at the map, thinks, oh, okay, maybe it's not that long. We'll go and get you help and come back. Maybe the path is too long. They try to cut over the hill. Jack Madruga takes a bad fall, and him and Bill Sterling are forced to stay behind, while Gary, Ted, and Jackie carry on up the path. I think that Gary, Jackie, and Ted might have been panicked. Not only do they think that Joe Shones is having a heart attack and might be dying, but now Jack Madruga is seriously injured potentially. So now that they might be running up the path because they want to get help, they find the trailer. They get in the trailer, they find there's no help there, and I think Gary tells Jackie and Ted to stay here, and that Gary's going to go and find help. And why I think that is, we know from police files that during the search in March, police found gold cloths wrapped around trees leading up the road that possibly could have been left by Gary, as he had this similar colour on the underside of his coat. And we also know that these tracks went up towards Soapstone Hill, and then went down towards these hunters' cabins. And it appeared that someone had looked around these hunters' cabins and then had gone further down into Soapstone Canyon, which is where I think Gary Mathias' remains were, as I think those tracks were left by Gary. And I think, unfortunately, Ted and Jackie stayed in the trailer, survived for as long as they could with the sea rations and maybe collecting snow for water, and unfortunately passed away. There was one quick theory I wanted to put out there about potentially why the boys might not have lit a fire. Again, this is not concrete, but I was thinking maybe if the boys had been walking all night and maybe partially during the day of the 25th of Feb to get here, this is the only sign of life they found. It's the only shelter they found. Maybe Gary thought that maybe Gary didn't want to leave Jackie and Ted with a fire going. Maybe you thought that if you lit a fire up and Gary left, maybe he didn't think that Jackie and Ted could maintain it. Because again, it wasn't like a fire stove.
That's a good point.
It was like kindling.
That's a good point. You're thinking through all the little items that could have played out. I like that.
It could have been like they only had matchbooks and some
kindling,
not
paperback
proper kindling.
books.
So maybe they had like someone lit a candle, which I think was Gary, just to have a look around, which suggests maybe they got there during the night and maybe stayed there to the morning. And maybe Gary thought, look, I don't want to leave Ted and Jackie in this trail alone, just because if I light the fire, it might get out of hand, and this is, they might not be able to maintain it as well if I'm gone, and it could burn the trailers down, and there's no shelter for them. So maybe he said, look, wait until I come back before you light a fire or anything, or don't light a fire until I've come back. And Gary leaves to go get help. And unfortunately, maybe maybe Jackie and Ted, because of the minor intellectual disabilities, maybe they thought, right, let's not light a fire until Gary comes back, or let's save these resources until we absolutely need to use them. And maybe it got to the point where, because we know about the toes dropping off because of frostbite, I also put forward the idea that maybe the men's fingers experienced frostbite, and that's why they were unable to open the cans. Maybe, like Ted experienced frostbite and was unable to get out of the bed. Maybe, Jackie and Ted experienced frostbite on the fingers, and it just was too painful for them to open up the food cans, which is why they only opened so many. Maybe they just physically couldn't open the cans anymore. So that's my theory. I personally believe Sean was involved. And I think he tried to cover his tracks. And the last thing I'll say is that it's convenient, but it's really convenient that I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks into the investigation, like Claudia Huett said before, that at the same time Joseph Shones stopped talking to the media and talking to the families, somebody that he knew very well was charged with attempted kidnapping. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I like that. You're almost like right where I
What's
am.
your case, man?
Yeah, and I'm gonna go back to like Claudia said. She doesn't think that Joe Shones could get one up on the boys, and I agree. Shones by himself couldn't. You got Gary. Gary was a barroom brawler. You know, and the rest of the boys, yes, they were sweet, had these innocent natures, and that's why they were called the boys. But they were athletic. I mean, they were played. They were very, Doc and Jackie. Like, let me put this picture of Jackie back up. Look at the one on the bottom left. I mean, look at his arms. I mean, he was in shape. I mean, he was strong like the rest of them. These were athletic guys.
This guy can fight in a situation like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were just, and there's still 5 of them you got to contend with. Not just Gary that would engage in a fight, but the rest of them were pretty physically able guys. So
and Dennis is a huge guy also. He has a temper.
Yeah, and Jones is a drunk. I mean, and he probably was drunk, so he's nothing for Gary. But I think Jones is involved. I really do. But I think he knew something was going to happen. Maybe someone else engages the boys at the game in Chico.
By action, but he is involved.
And they make a deal with Gary. Hey, Gary, if y'all come up here, we got something for you, either drugs or whatever they could have enticed him with, or help. But there's something that they already had to have that ruse in place before they get to Rogers Scout Camp. They had to have been going on something like a reason to go through all that, because like we said, Jack would not want to drive his car up there, but he did. He did drive his car up there. So there had to be some promise of something once they got there. Like they took Shones up there, or because I don't think Shones set out that morning thinking, I'm going to go do this. I don't. I think maybe he knew somebody that did, possibly.
I
think it was a kidnapping gone wrong. And I think it could have something to do with the game, because it's just too convenient that they were playing that game the next day and they don't make it.
You're freaking. The night before, the great game.
The night before, and they all wanted to play, including Gary Mathias. Gary Mathias wanted to play in that game as bad as anybody. So the whole Forbstown stuff is nonsense.
That's a fact.
And taking a wrong turn going to Forbstown is nonsense. That didn't happen. And Gary was on his meds. He wasn't, he was really even on his medications. Tammy will justify that, because once they got him settled on his right regimen, and his stepfather Bob would give him to him, Gary was not a risk for just going schizo, as they'd say. He wouldn't. They had a promise of something that got him up that hill. Somehow Shones is involved, because Shones had no reason to be up there. Just being drunk is not, in this whole line about the snow weekend or what. It's comical. So Shones knows something more. I think he's got a lower level involvement with somebody else that did not want those boys either to play in the game or held for ransom. But I'm going with botched kidnapping for now. What about you, Eduardo? Where do you sit?
I don't know. Like I said, for me, this is a crime, because they didn't get lost. There is just no way the boys got lost. The timing is a very important issue, because I don't believe that the boys will like to play an adventure the night before the great game. Not these guys. No, not these guys. Like, let's play a game, or let's make something outrageous. Maybe they could do that, but not the night before the great game. I think the timing just put that theory away from me. This is a crime. I would very much like to know who's involved. I think Joseph Shones have something to do with this, either by omission, either by negligence, either by action, by actual involvement. But there you go. We need a third party that put the boys up there, and it is not Joseph Shones. We need someone else that convince the boys, trick the boys, manipulate the boys with a promise, with a reward. I don't know. We know the boys were helpers, and if you tell the boys, "I need your help,"
they were known to help people. Even Gary, Gary was known to help people, but Gary would have been a little more. Gary was just like anybody else.
And the boys probably will fail for that. I don't know, but we need this third party. One of the viewers was comment a few minutes ago. What do we know about the relationship, if there is any, between Shones and the town bully? We don't. I don't know.
We don't know, but but if we found that connection, it would be big. I can tell you that the town bully's relatives are kind of from more of that area. I think. A little more out, not Berry Creek, but more out that way, kind of a little Forbstown, Brownsville, kind of that direction. So not real far. He's got family members. So yeah, those two guys could have known each other. And then somehow comes into play. I know that Shones claimed that he used to be a drug counselor. So that makes you think of gateway projects. And somebody brought this up earlier. What about the fire bombings at Gateway? Which happened that was what, 76 when that happened, and the Gateway projects were where the boys played basketball, and it was there for it was men and women that were looking to get a skill, and they weren't all they had different forms of a handicap and just needed assistance, kind of like a community center. But it was somebody threw a Molotov cocktail through the window, and then the guy that was director at the time lived in an apartment. He was literally burned alive in his own apartment by somebody that same year. And I know his daughter's out on the internet talking, but and that'd be interesting to see what she knows. But the police never thought the two were related, but they could be. And maybe the town bully did know
different
Shones.
different times. The police have a point with that. I have also thought about that, and I cannot just connect the dots. But the Gateway project was attacked several times, like 7 times before this, and I'm not a believer in coincidences and just luck. No, I'm
not
just
either.
I'm just a simple man, meat and potatoes. The facts, the physics, and that's it. Besides,
Claudia,
sorry.
I know Claudia says here that I know the Huetts are still big on the town bully theory, and we know this guy's capable. Nobody is questioning that. It's just all you have to do with that is figure out how Gary's sneakers make it to the trailer. Which could be some innocent explanation for Gary's shoes being in the trailer.
Yeah, that's a point for me for not believing in the throw at the Oroville Dam theory. When you when you throw a human body into a body of water, you want the victim to have his shoes on because it makes dead weight. A
little heavier. Yeah, even if they were
you make air in the sneakers and you sink easier.
Yeah,
why
I don't think those
leave
guys
the shoes out?
Yeah, the shoes is a tough one to get around unless the family was just mistaken, and I don't think they would have, because it looked like he did probably switch out with Ted.
Yeah,
but at that point, if Ted was still alive, think of this though, guys. If Ted's still alive and Gary gets to the trailer, like we were talking earlier, and let's just say Gary's only there for a few days, takes off early, and the police surmised that Gary switched shoes with Ted, who had bigger feet, leather shoes, and Gary's feet could have been swollen from frostbite or whatever, and he puts on Ted's shoes, and he's leaving Ted there with no shoes on. Poor Ted. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, going back to the town bully, there's also, I believe, members of the family could back this up as well, that there's a lot of suspicion with this town bully in another case regarding a young boy's death called Keenan Wright.
Yes.
This happened in 1976. And this is also strange because not only is this town bully suspected by Keenan Wright's family of his potential murder, but it's also the way in which Keenan Wright's body was found was not too similar to the boys. It was more of a case of Keenan Wright had gone off with some friends.
Yeah.
Allegedly, the town bully was the last person to see him, and Keenan Wright, if I believe this right, Keenan Wright's remains were found up a hill many days later, which is odd, and again, which is similar to the boys in that, in terms of boys disappeared, there's rumours of this town bully involved, and then their bodies are found miles apart up on a mountain. Again, I know Keenan Wright's family do believe this town bully has something to do with it. I know,
absolutely.
I believe it's Jack Madruga's older sister, Janet. In your book, Drew, Kathy Madruga said that Jack's older sister sat down with who she believed was the town bully at a diner. She was going to kill him.
But remember, that wasn't.
It wasn't him.
She said it was a preacher, but she gave a different name, and I won't say that name. But it wasn't the name of the person we know was the town bully. But it was somebody that not only knew Keenan Wright, not saying knew him really well, if you know what we're talking about. And he also knew the town bully. And Tammy told me that those guys knew each other. That you wouldn't call them friends, but they did hang around each other. But a lot of people hung around the town bully out of fear. Like if he wanted to be around you, you weren't going to tell him no, because he was going to inflict pain on you one way or the other. And this other guy I'm talking about that she said she met at the bar, who she was going to shoot for being the demise of her brother, being Jack Madruga. You know, he was not a preacher, but he definitely knew Town Bully. And from what I know from George, this guy was as bad as Apple is the Town Bully number one, we'll call him. The second, this other guy was pretty bad guy himself. So there's
This is
just
the part
another
that makes
avenue.
the less sense to me. I mean, let's think this through. You have a town bully with a huge sheet of priors. He has shit. The families know him, and you don't question this guy. I mean,
I think the police let him off a lot for a lot of things. He got off of a lot.
My question
So
is
did Joe
why?
Shones, by the way. Joe Shones got a lot of favorable treatment.
Is this guy protected? Is this guy connected with law enforcement, politicians?
Maybe.
I'm asking because I don't know, really, honestly.
Maybe he could have been. We don't know, but I know the police let this guy go a lot because I don't know if they just didn't want to deal with him. He was in prison. He was in prison for a long time, and there's a story where he just got the crap beat out of him in prison. And trust me, he deserved
just
it.
one more detail, like Anthony stated before. You have a witness that states that he was there participating on this guy's crew who allegedly killed Gary Mathias, and this guy shows up dead. You don't question this guy? I mean,
you'd have to.
I think the police dropped the ball on this one, honestly.
Yeah, and then remember the big revelation in the Yuba podcast, which I highly recommend. The big revelation was there is a note in the police files that says that they consider this a homicide, and that all points to the Town Bully. Going back to Claudia in the Huetts, there is a note in there. We think it doesn't say they think it's homicide by the Town Bully, but there's this alleged confession where he confessed in church that, hey, I really did something bad years ago to these guys or whatever. But we don't know if the confession is true. There's no recording of it, so it's still one of those lingering things.
The witness didn't want to state it again officially because he was so afraid, I believe, of this guy, this preacher guy. So, I mean, you have all the guns pointing at this guy. You don't not press this guy to go further. I don't know. Because
maybe that's why one of the witnesses died mysteriously of a drug overdose it was a heroin overdose, right? And the guy was known to never shoot heroin. I mean, he was a pill popper, but they said he was never would inject drugs, and he died of a heroin overdose with injected. They found him with a needle in his arm, and it was at a party or something. It was very strange death. And then somebody else involved, I guess, moved away, or like every witness is gone all of a sudden, within months.
And that person that moved away did also own a red truck, I believe, or a truck, and moved away.
Famous red pickup truck. Yeah.
Oh yeah. There is one thing I want to quickly say, and it's something that I've heard a lot online, and that's a lot of theories regarding Gary Mathias being involved. I know we touched on it before. There's a lot of people who believe he was involved because of his criminal past, that he wasn't like the men. And the main theory that people like to point to is that right after Bears Market, Gary Mathias had some sort of schizophrenic episode that resulted in the men driving up that way and getting lost. Well, I don't believe that. I'm pretty sure you guys don't believe that. And
no, never have.
There's a lot of people point to the fact that the other guys, the other guys were scared of him. They would, Gary was going to make him do something. But from what I've learned about all the men, like the easiest scenario for me, and again, if Tammy Mathias is here, she can correct me if I say anything wrong, because I don't want to about Gary. But the simplest scenario for me is, let's say if Gary Mathias is struggling with an oncoming schizophrenic episode. For what we know about the boys, the most likely scenario is they drive down to Oroville Hospital, they get Gary out, maybe Ted and Jackie take it, Ted, Bill, and Jackie get him into the hospital, and Jack Madruga rings up Gary's parents and says, hey, we just want to let you know Gary's had an incident, but he's at Oroville Hospital. Just letting you know now. That to me seems more plausible. I can't see Jack Madruga or Ted.
Or you have a fight between the five and you have a car crash.
Yeah. I can't see Jack Madruga, just being so on board with wanting to go up this area if Gary was forced into it. It's like that's Jack's car. you're not telling him how to drive. And Ted
Right,
Weiher,
especially if Gary's flipping out or he's having an episode, Jack is going to be under a lot of stress driving that car up to drive it that steady with Gary going, whatever. I mean, it would not be easy. That'd be a lot of stress.
For me, the biggest one is Ted Weiher. Like Tony was saying before, he was known to have a short temper, and he was known to become distressed and maybe not violent, but he could, if he wanted to.
He was still a big guy, even if he's just upset and moving. It could be a big deal because he was a big guy. Ted, Ted Weiher was a good sized guy.
Yeah, there's no way. I was saying this to you, Eduardo. There's no way I could see Gary if he's having under a lot of mental stress. There's no way I could see Ted and Jack Madruga just being on board with it. Like Tony said in the Mopac audio, it's either they get him out, they help Gary out at Oroville Hospital and bring the parents up and get him help, or if he's being too violent, like Jack stops the car, Jack and Ted get Gary out, get him out, right? You're walking home, we're driving home, something like that.
You leave Gary alone in the road, you get a fight, and then probably a car crash, as I said. But you don't come up with this scenario with Gary Mathias involved. No,
I agree. Yeah, they were. They would have done. They would have been four. It's still 4-on-1. I never thought that. Gary was stable on his meds. Yeah. They would have taken at least a week or two to wear off because that stuff builds up in your blood. Yeah, it would have been highly unlikely. And he wanted to play in that game as bad as any of them.
Yeah, and like some of the reports as well that I know a lot of people online like to point to about, like Gary said this thing to this person. Gary said this thing to this other person. Like he told, the most famous one is, I believe there was a woman called, is it Janet in Vince who she claimed that Gary told her that he was going to disappear with a bunch of people and said some other incriminating things. But when police,
she didn't even know that well. I think
when police interviewed her, they found no connection at all between her and Gary. Like she hardly knew him.
And she spun that whole story. And it got picked up and it got told and told. She didn't even know him that well.
Yeah, there's another man in the case files that came forward and claimed that he was out walking one day and Gary Mathias punched him and claimed that he was being followed by government agents or something. But again, when they pressed deeper into him, there was they found no connection between him and Gary. And I think Tony Wright know a bit more, but there's a lot of these claims from some of these people who allegedly saw Gary or who allegedly had run-ins with Gary that had no credit behind them, who might have just said things just because they wanted some attention. Although we will say two things. There were two alleged sightings of Gary after the disappearance. One of them was from Kathy Madruga, who is Jack Madruga's niece. She, I believe this was 4 months after the men's bodies were found.
Kathy Madruga was La Casablanca bar.
Kathy Madruga had just finished a day working for the Forest Service Agency. I believe it was September, October. Like Drew said, she stopped by at a family-owned bar named Casablanca. And she claimed she saw Gary Mathias as someone who looked like Gary in one of the stools or one of the seats at the front bar. She ran behind, told the parents, they came out and he was gone. She was interviewed by Lance Ayres. She was shown different pictures and she could correctly
identify him immediately. She knew him. She knew him well.
And the other potential one, I don't think it's not as talked about, but I know you included this in your book, Drew, was that in the 80s, I believe Tammy Mathias said that she was working as a nurse.
Yeah, and they brought someone in that she thought could have been her brother, but it turned out not to be. But at the time, she thought it could have been. So it's a great story, but it turned out not to be Gary. Yeah. But I think the guy's name was Gary, and he looked a lot like her brother.
But again, just to reiterate, I personally don't believe that Gary set out to harm his friend.
No, I'm glad you said that. I never thought that. Tammy knows that. Tammy doesn't like hearing that. And I don't think he did. Like, if Gary was just going to set out to kill his friends, it's obvious that two of them, the first two, they froze to death of hypothermia. He didn't beat them. He had plenty of other opportunities to do harm to these guys. Yeah. He's not going to do it the night before a huge game where he really wanted to play. He told his mother as well, over and over, don't let me oversleep. Don't let me oversleep. I mean, his jersey was laid out just like Doc. He wanted to play in that game as bad as anybody.
And we've also got to think as well, if a lot of people are claiming that that Gary Mathias had some sort of episode, and he was not mentally right when he was on the mountain. Well, we know from based off the evidence they found in the trailer going back to the tennis shoes that it appeared that Gary swapped his shoes with Ted's, and that he was the one that broke into the storage locker. He was the one that potentially might have grabbed a blanket and a flashlight out of the trailer. We don't know if that's a definite fact. It's something that was reported. But it seems like someone was caring for Ted and got the food cans out. To me, that is not somebody that is having a mental breakdown or having
if Gary, because we know that Ted lived for at least 8 to 10 weeks. Because of his beard growth, and he was 200 pounds, and when they found him, he lost 80 pounds. A 200-pound guy went down to 120. Because he was still alive. They knew judging by his beard, that it grown. If you're dead, your beard's not going to grow. So that's how they judged that, and somebody had to take care of it. And if Gary was off of his medicine, and Tammy would know better than anybody, for like 2 or 3 weeks, he's going to be really not in the right mind to switch shoes. He's not going to know to open food.
Not even
to go really bad.
Not even to go to the game on the first place.
Oh, he would have been bad. He would have been just left the trailer like running in circles.
Which is another reason for me why I think Gary makes it to the trailer and why he leaves early. Because I think Tony and Shannon said this in the Mopac audios, that maybe Gary thought, okay, it's been a day since we've got to this trailer. I've not had my medication for a day. I think after a week, it could start to wear off. I need to get help, for not only for the guys. Maybe he goes to get help allegedly, potentially for Shones, if that theory might be true. But he's like, look, I need to get help, and I need to go out and get my medicine, or else I'm not going to be in the right state of mind. Which is why he might leave early.
He could maybe feel himself slipping, every day that went by that he wasn't on it, because it builds up in your bloodstream, and he was on 3 or 4 different powerful medications.
Which is why I think those tracks that police saw going up towards Soapstone Hill and then down towards Soapstone's Canyon, I think those were Gary's. I think from his military training, he would have been told, right, if you want to know where you are, first thing to do is to get to higher elevation, have a look at your surroundings. Because when they were walking up the road, it would have been night. There would have been a lot of trees covering the area. They wouldn't have had a good view of where they are. So I think maybe Gary walks out, goes to Soapstone Hill, climbs up so high, has a look around his view, sees the hunters' cabins, which they reported they found tracks going to. I think it was Gary that went down there, looked for people and other supplies, and when he didn't find people, I think he went down into Soapstone Canyon, because it was lower elevation. That's where you're going to find people, and that's where you might find fresh water as well. Maybe he was planning on coming back with water, maybe, we don't know. But that's where I think Gary Mathias' remains might be.
I think you're right about that. I'm going to agree with that.
I think they'll be in Soapstone Canyon, because when the snow came, police couldn't go into the canyon because it was just so much snow would come down. And I think that's where his remains will be. Maybe he took a tumble like Doc might have done, injured his leg, he couldn't move. Maybe he got stuck in a manzanita bush going down there. Maybe he slipped. And I think because of all the snow that had piled on top, I think unfortunately his body decomposed faster. But that's where I bet my money on where he is. And I am one of my things that I want to do is I want to take a trip to Yuba County, and I want to go. I want to go to the Yuba County and to the Plumas National Forest, and that's one of the things that I want to do is to have a look around Soapstone Canyon. That's one of my things that I want to do, and if I ever get to go there, which I am planning on doing eventually.
Yeah, if you come to the States, that'd be great. I'd love to meet you. Same with you, Eduardo, if you ever make it over.
Oh, soon enough, believe me. One interesting thing about these statements finger pointing to Gary is that nobody could tell further details on why Gary did eventually freak out that night. Like that. I believe it's Janet, Kathleen, and Sarah. This is the girl who stayed to the sheriff's office that she knew Gary Mathias for a long period of time, that she had told her on several occasions that he has a dream where several other people will disappear and talk about spaceships and people from outer space and yada, 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 but she couldn't provide no further details on this. And any real police on a case like this will ask you, okay, when did Gary said this? When, especially.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was
It's
a week before, a month before the fact.
Yeah, she didn't know.
Yeah. And this is very interesting. This is one of the many details that make me believe
I
that
agree.
Gary Mathias is just one victim more. Believe me.
It's another thing. Yeah, there's Claudia says this, and I want to wrap it up really soon. I know it's been a while and it's late for you guys, but she says if they would have searched the trailer, she said if they searched the trailers when Jack Sr. asked, she said the boys would have been found alive, or at least maybe a few of them, his son included. That's true. I always do go back to that. How could they have not? Because that's one of the first things I honed in on when I did the book was, wait a minute, as the crow flies, this was only like 5.7 miles from Rogers Cow Camp to Daniels Inc. or the Fire Base Camp number 8 or whatever that's called. I mean, to that area where the trailer was. It was only about 5.7 miles as the crow flies. Surely somebody knew about those trailers because the snowcat had been up there just the day before the boys go missing, which is just a real bizarre coincidence that they happened to go up the day before. And they surmised, so the track was still fresh, so the boys took it and had the, around the corner syndrome or whatever. So they just kept thinking, surely this path leads somewhere because it's so neat. But she's right. How could they not? How could they have not known about the trailers if the snowcat was there? And then I go back to the fact is, did anyone ever? I know somebody else that's written about this case was really suspect of whoever drove the snowcat up there, where the snowcat was left. And I know Tony knows a lot of this. Where was the snowcat left? Who drove it? Were they questioned? And why, like Claudia says, why did they not know about the trailers? They weren't that far. They just assumed it had to be right around Rogers Cow Camp. And we know there's snow everywhere.
Well, we do know
deep,
that,
but
we do know that according to Roger Cook, who was one of the bikers that found Ted Weir's body in the trailers on June 1st, he claimed and he stated that when he was interviewed by a deputy from Butte County, that they showed on the map that the Daniels Inc. where the campground was, it was on the maps. So we at least know that Butte County had maps.
They should have known about it.
Yeah,
they knew about it.
Yeah, like why
according
wouldn't they check?
To the Forest Service, at least the Forest Service told we have these trailers. According to Forest Service, Butte County allegedly knew about the trailer. So the question is why? Maybe they thought that they did, because Beecham once said, I think that this is on the podcast. Beecham said that this is like finding I don't know the
needle in a
exact
haystack.
English. Yeah,
needle in a haystack.
Something very hard to find. Maybe they thought no, maybe not, but it was so hard to look. How hard it was to look upon that.
Yeah, or maybe they just thought there's no way that these guys even went that far in this kind of snow. Like they just never considered they could have made it that far.
Well, going back,
the benefit of the doubt.
Going back to one of the theories that you just said, Drew, about some people saying that it was the forest ranger who used the snowcat. It's convenient. I know some people online have been stating that the gold Wathan watch that was found in the trailer that didn't belong to any of the boys. I know some people saying that what if that watch belonged to the Forest Service worker who cleared the snow off the trailer and just left the watch there because it was missing its crystal inside. Again, I don't know if it has anything to do with the boys' disappearance, but we do know.
No, but it's a good point. Who leaves a golden watch behind, even broken? Come on.
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah, it was. It was a Waltham. It wasn't expensive, but still, it was a watch. If it just had a broken crystal, you could fix it. Do we know that the person that came and got the snow off the roof, did they spend the night in the trailer? Do we know this?
Yeah, that's true.
We don't know. We don't know anything about them, do we?
No.
We don't know anything about it. No, but I haven't seen anything in the files about who did it.
No.
Did they question them later? Like, they were there where Ted's body was found the day before that the boys make it to the trailer, or at least 2 or 3, whatever version you go with. But you think this guy would have been questioned heavily? Like, what did you see? What did the path look like? Did you spend the night there? Was it hard to find the food? Was it, I've seen nothing about it.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know if, because like we stated before, we know Kathy Madruga worked for the Forest Service Division for a short period. It'd be interesting if she asked any questions about, how the Forest Service works.
Tammy did. Tammy worked for the Forest Service for a while. She's in the
medical
medical field. If Tammy's still on, you can answer to it. But
yeah,
Tammy worked for the Forest Service.
Because that'd be something.
Not when her brother went missing, but later on.
That'd be something I'd ask almost immediately. Of like, look, why didn't you tell the police about the trailers? And if you did, why didn't you go up there yourselves? Who went up, like you said, who went up there in the snowcat? What route did they take?
Yeah. What did it look like? You were there where the body was found the day before. We want to talk to you.
Yeah. Exactly.
It makes no sense. It's really, that's strange.
Like
I mean, I have seen nothing on it. Who drove the snowcat? Did they stay? What did they know? What did they see? How was the weather?
We don't even know his name, do we?
No, I've never seen a name.
No,
I've never seen it. I mean, I'm still going through the files, but I have seen nothing on that. I'd be the first person I want to talk to.
Oh,
yeah. Just at the crime or the scene where he's found.
First witness.
The day before?
There. Yeah.
Yeah. There's somebody I want to like, what did you see? What did, just really weird. Yeah. I don't know. But man, I don't know. I guess we'll wrap it up. It's been a couple hours, but it's been great. Thanks for you guys for making it. And Tony,
thank you for having me.
All your great work. Yeah, we'll all get together again. It's the anniversary. It's so great that 3 of the families represented. Thanks to the Huetts for coming.
Thank you.
Tammy and George Madruga.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about them. If we can, I just think that we have a chance of figuring this out. And I guarantee you, there's still people that haven't heard about it. Not everybody's on YouTube. Obviously, it's a popular case on YouTube where we are right now because of the mystery of it and all that. But this is real people, real family members, and to them, it seems like it happened yesterday. I'm sure. I mean, that loss doesn't go away, and you never had any kind of finality at all. Why did this happen? Especially for Tammy, she doesn't know where her brother's remains are. That's awful. I think Tammy got a call or something not long ago where they found somebody's remains up in the area, and it turned out not to be Gary, but you always have some hope that they would at least find, where Gary, final resting spot was. But there's just so many questions. But I think if maybe that one person, if we know it this well, and Tony and us, to hear that one piece that just suddenly makes it all make sense, all of it. Like, why they didn't turn the heat on? Why didn't they start a fire? Why didn't they eat more food? Maybe we find out that Shones knew the bully or just that one small little thing that'll just make it all open up is what I hope.
Well, I hope that again, best case scenario, I think that, if somebody could interview the town bully, ask him some questions, the crew, if any of the crew are still alive, ask them. This basketball coach, he's still alive. He's in Florida. You can ask.
Yeah, that could be more there than I thought because going back to the coach real quick the theory was right that he was at the game in Chico with a girlfriend. He was married and he was at the game in Chico with a girlfriend. Yeah, and the boys spotted him and he was worried the boys would rat him out to his wife. Is that kind of the theory?
Yeah, that was one theory I heard online that maybe he was at the basketball game in Chico and like you just said he was having an affair with some sort of girl, and the theory goes that either Ted or Gary recognized him and went over after the game and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And this guy was like, "Oh no, I got
caught." Yeah,
after Bear Market or before?
No, at the game in Chico.
At the Chico
at the court.
Yeah. The coach, the Gateway coach was at the Chico game.
Yeah, I don't know if I fully believe this theory, but they pointed out that because Ted and Ted was very polite and kind, and maybe this basketball coach was like, "Oh, he's going to tell my wife tomorrow or whatever,"
Yeah, it's just one.
I don't know if I fully believe it. I know there's another version that we've stated before about like gambling and some sort of money laundering with him. That maybe he had bets on for certain players. That maybe
because even Tom said that they would. Somebody asked that earlier. They didn't think it would be likely that people would bet on a Special Olympics game. Well, Tom said that they would. He said, "Oh yeah, back in the day, you would absolutely bet on games like that." Like, it's not just because it's Special Olympics. They're barred from gambling. I mean, it's like some bad people gamble on, 2 bugs crossing the road.
And like
they would gamble on games like that.
And like Tammy Mathias said in the chat, I didn't know about this until she commented saying that this basketball coach didn't like Gary. Maybe didn't like.
Yeah, that's interesting. She did say that. Yeah.
Yeah. What if there's? That's something I really want to ask her. And the other men's families, do we know if this basketball coach, especially with Gary, were they very confrontational? It seems like they didn't get along. Could this basketball coach have confronted Gary about something? Could Gary have confronted something about him, like the wife? Could he confront it if this guy, if the theory was true, that the coach is there at the game? What if Gary sees him and says, "Hey, what are you doing? You're cheating on your wife and that. What's up?" And maybe there's like a fight that happens, and it's this coach that does Gary in, and then he's the one that takes the boys up there because the boys would have trusted him because he's someone that they know, that they trust. He's a familiar face, which again, this is all speculation. I've got no evidence for it, but that could tie into the fact that this guy wanted to say where he was on the night of the 24th, where he was in the morning of 25th, and he didn't explain why he was late to that basketball game. There's no reason for him to be late, and
that needs to be explained.
Yeah, and still to this day, we don't know, where he was on that night or the morning because he wouldn't tell Lance Ayres. We have no idea. So that's, he's someone I think should be interviewed, and we do know that Joseph Schoen's daughter is still alive, and I think
Tony Wright spoke with her, not for long, and she was a little bit helpful. She didn't, know a whole lot. She has what's called dysphasia, which is a, kind of learning disability, which is, ironic that she's, like the boys in that respect. She has a, learning disability. She's a little slow, but fully functional, has a job. And Tony talked to her a little bit, and suddenly someone told her not to talk anymore, but I won't go any more into that. Scott asked the question, does anyone know who won the Special Olympics game? And was the game canceled since the boys didn't show? I found one article about this that said that the game did go on and the Gateway team won, but I think there might have been two different teams.
Gators won,
But the Gators did win, and I'm assuming that's obviously with backup players, but I think the boys could have been the bulk of the team, but they did win, and I don't know who, how or why, but I found one little article that shed light on that where they did play and they did win. So I don't know if that hurts any gambling theories or maybe somebody wanted to play in the game and said, hey, go get, make sure these guys don't kill them, but just, I don't want them to play so I can get some playing time. So I don't know. I mean, it's all speculation.
Like I said, that would kind of make sense if they didn't want to murder the boys, but they were like, look, can you get him up here to this location? It'll take them time.
Yeah, just keep them gone for that long enough where they can't make it the next morning. I've always thought that though. I don't know. That one sticks with me because it's just so coincidental. The game is the next day.
Yeah.
Oh man, go over, but I think we covered a lot though. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're going, and I know all four of us will be staying on this case. Shannon too. If people haven't heard the Yuba podcast, I'll drop a link into it. I usually don't do the links until the video uploads to YouTube, but that link will be in there. For sure. And then we'll do it again, soon. It'll be a better time for you guys for sure. But thanks for doing it late and staying up late. That means a lot, and then Tony coming on when they've had all this snow where he is in Michigan. So he was kind of worried he wouldn't make it at all because he lost his Wi-Fi and all that. But Tony was a trooper. He made it on. He's just been doing great things with this case. But I mean, I know you guys are always, all you guys are always looking for more on the internet, reading anything that can be out there. So it's just great stuff. And of course, the video that came out, Missing Enigma, great channel. Go check it out.
Sure.
I thought he did a great job. I think he does pronounce, he calls Ted Weiher though. That's the only thing I wish he would fix is it's Ted Weiher.
That's funny.
It's pronounced Weiher.
It's Weiher, right?
Weiher, yeah. And he says Weiher. It's pronounced Weiher. I think kind of like Bob Weir, the Grateful Dead. It's pronounced like that, Weir, not Wire. But other than that, it's a great video.
Absolutely.
Missing Enigma, great channel, and check that out. I know the second part's up. I'm going to check out. So that's going to, who knows? I mean, it's getting even more people getting introduced to the case.
Oh yeah,
the more the merrier.
Yeah, more the merrier. Yeah, I mean, it's all about
maybe someone make us see the things that look at this detail we didn't find out, and
And then it all makes sense.
Yeah, maybe we will reach with what our main goal is. We want justice for the boys. We want answers.
Justice for the
boys
and the families.
For the families. That's
It's
it.
yeah, that's it. That's it. I mean, and
45 years, we don't have answers. I mean,
45 years. 45 years today.
One thing I want to say, we have the last notation on the case file. Sorry, is that some policeman or policewoman state that Gary Mathias was victim of foul play.
Okay. Right. Yes, that was the big revelation in the podcast. Is that we don't know why. We don't know why. We don't know if that was put in there.
We have a living suspect. Wink.
Absolutely.
Today. Oh yeah. Okay. If you law enforcement think that Gary Mathias was a victim of foul play, go and interrogate, ask a few questions on this living suspect.
Yeah.
And see what he has to say about this. Maybe he has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
If he's truly changed his life, he may want to get that off his chest before he leaves the earth, because from what I understand, he's not in great health and he's a little older. He might not be around for a whole lot longer.
Or maybe he's innocent,
and he might want to get it off his chest.
The table.
And he might not have anything to do with this.
But I don't believe that law enforcement has not interrogated this man. This is unbelievable, even for Argentinian standards. I mean,
a little bit different. Yeah, no, I agree. He's alive, and there's another person alive that I think should be. There's actually two more. There's three that I'd like to question. I can't say any of their names, but we know the top one we're talking about now. And there's two, and there's two more. Yeah, that I'd like to. I'd love to talk to. But I don't think they're talking. I know two of them aren't talking.
Not the talking type, yeah.
Yeah. Two of them are not talking for sure.
Oh yeah.
But there's three people alive that I'd love to sit down and see if they would be truthful.
Yeah.
But that's great. Yeah, George says thank you. Heard some very good, new, interesting, plausible theories.
Thank you, George.
Yeah, and thanks again to you, George, and the Huetts, and to Tammy. So awesome that three of the families were represented.
Yeah, thank you so
tonight,
much.
and that we got to talk about it on the anniversary. So it's all, it's about the memory of the boys, and these were just good guys, man. They enjoyed things.
Yeah.
They went roller skating. They love sports. They love music. They like everybody else, just good people. And this is just. It's like I think Bob Clough said, Gary's stepfather, you don't expect for them to just go to a basketball game on a Friday night and never come home. Just think of that. It's just after all these years, we got to, we're going to keep at it. We're going to keep at it as long as we're around. But I don't know, but it's the boys, and it's about their memory, and I think they did get to do, unfortunately, a lot of good things, and they had each other, which is great.
It's something to praise up the effort that the families put on for the boys to live a normal life, to enjoy the world, to never mind your disabilities or whatever. Just live your life, and this is admirable, because the normal thing is, stay at home, stay with us, keep out of trouble. But these families went, for me, the right way, live your life, enjoy all the possibilities that the world. And the boys did. They were pretty good athletes. They went to dancing, they went bowling, they went basketball games, of course. They girlfriends.
Yeah, this was our favorite team. I always wear this in their honor. UC Davis Aggies. That was their team, and Tony got one like this too. And that was their team. They loved everything, all UC Davis Aggies. That was their local team because they were in Sacramento. Of course, Yuba City is just north of Sacramento. And they knew everything about the Aggies.
Yeah. Like, 4 of them have played in the Special Olympics. Like, I know Jackie Huett had medals as well that Claudia Huett shared with you, and those on the Mopac audio. Like Ted, I believe he held a record in his high school for the longest time, for the longest and furthest softball throw.
Yeah, the softball, very good athlete. All of them were good.
Yeah.
Doc was a great athlete. George, his nephew, was a really great athlete. I think it just ran in the family. George Madruga was a standout 2-sport athlete, baseball and football. if I'm correct, and he was a big time athlete. So for George to say his uncle was a good athlete is no understatement.
Oh, yeah. Like Bill Sterling was on
And what
the
about
Penn
Gary?
Pickers bowling.
Gary was a good
500 miles
athlete.
walk. Come on.
Gary played football for
Oh, yeah.
Marysville.
He was in the newspapers as well at the time as well for his accomplishments. And like we said, he was a great football player, good at playing basketball. And Bill Sterling was on a bowling team as well, the Penn Pickers at the time. And he was very well known for that as well. He was very good at bowling. So like you were saying, Eduardo, like they're all, awesome, lovely guys in that line. And for me personally, it hits home.
Caring guys, loving guys, trying to have the most of it, And
just sweet. They were kind of insulated from the real nasty, bad people of the world that they were unfortunately surrounded by. So it's just of all people to meet a fate like that it's just not fair.
It's horrible.
And it's so tragic. And the family still feel it today. Like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Instead of 45 years.
Man.
45 years.
It's so sad that sometimes I feel like crying with this case, man. I gotta
I heard Claudia wrote a nice note to Tammy, and I mean I got emotional. It was just really I had to just stop. So sweet, but man, thanks for coming on, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming on so late.
Thank you for having us on as well. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be heard by the families. Just great. So excited, so many times watching your videos through. Now I'm one of these and feel honored. Thank you so much.
No, we're welcome to the team. And I know Tony feels the same, and we're going to be on it. And then, we still have Tony's book to look forward to and lots of other things. Cause it's just, I think Claudia even said earlier, like the case is just it seems like it's getting even bigger.
I'm going to be here until we solve it. I hope we're all going to be here until it's solved. That's the mission.
I think we will be. Yeah. We'll be here as long as we can be.
We will.
Oh, yeah. I ain't leaving this earth until I solve this case. That's my goal.
You guys are on it, man.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, have a good night, and we'll all stay in touch.
No worries. Have a nice night, everyone.
All right.
Thank you. Good night,
everyone. Thanks, everybody in the chat, and again, to all the family members that showed up. So there again is that picture of the boys, and God rest their souls.